Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It's Adele here with you from Roll Credits, and today we're going to be talking with the visionary creators behind the Final Girls Film Festival out of Berlin. It's Ellie and Sarah. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So, the Final Girls Film Festival is a showcase of the horror genre of cinema, and the criteria for the festival is for all films screened to be directed, written, or produced by women and non-binary people who identify as non-binary, which I love. So, yeah, supporting like female filmmakers in the industry is a big effort of mine. So, I really love what your festival is all about. How did it all get started? How did it all come about?
Yeah, so we met. Sarah and I are friends, and we got connected through a mutual friend with Lara, and that's how it kind of began. And it started off really small, very low budget. We just kind of swung for the fences and did our best. And every year so far, it's been growing. Like I feel like this is kind of our biggest festival yet.
We to be also a platform for other kinds of media. Like we one time we had an art exhibition for more like horror tinged art by female artists, and we have horror specialists giving talks and workshops at the festival also. And yeah, we want to also branch out into like live performance and see about just women and non-binary people in horror, all kinds of whatever horror can be, right? So cinema first and foremost, but then
Yeah.
interconnected with other kinds of media.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So the festival is in its fourth edition. Um, and how has it sort of evolved specifically throughout your previous iterations?
Yeah. So I guess we've definitely like expanded our social media presence, I guess you could say, and that way also people know more about us. So I do feel like every year we're getting more submissions, and also people know about us somehow. People, that we are surprised by that know about us. And so yeah, I feel like gradually it's always going to be a niche thing, I guess, to a certain extent, but we're still like making the most of it, I think, of what it can offer. So
I would also add that we're touring too, so it's not
yeah,
just a Berlin-based
yes,
film festival, but we've had screenings in Sweden, and was it Gothenburg and Stockholm, and we've had an
yeah.
event in Austria. We had a few things in the States, in Philadelphia and Seattle. So yeah,
Tel
we're
Aviv.
pretty open.
Hmm.
Tel Aviv, yeah,
Yeah,
there are more and more
yeah,
screenings.
yeah,
That's
So
incredible. Well, don't you think that's fabulous how like the online space, there is a place for everyone to find their corner of the internet, and especially with
mhm,
something horror, something that is so niche like horror cinema. It's really great that the internet and social media can kind of bring it all together and you can find your audience.
yeah,
totally.
definitely. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think that
I feel like everyone, I mean, yeah, we responds well as well when we try to connect with people. They're always like, "This is actually quite a great," and of course we'd like to be part of it. So I feel like it's really resonating with people as well, which is yeah. Mhm.
that's
Yeah, and we're
awesome.
starting to also like reach people who don't necessarily like horror either. Like they might have a stigma, a sort of prejudice against the horror genre, and then they come to our festival and they realize that the films that we're showing are also like rich in social commentary and just kind of important documents of also like feminism in our current times. And yeah, so people who maybe had some kind of a negative impression of what horror can be are realizing through our films that is also a really powerful tool for expressing various kinds of messages. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
we also have a broad understanding of horror, we would say. So we show films that are maybe uncommon in horror festivals. Like last year we showed Pincushion, which is a social drama about like bullying and just the horrors of that. And we showed this other short film by Laura Moss called Friday, which wasn't shown in any other horror film festivals about Ted Bundy, but more of like a drama, like a coming of age drama spin on that.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so we want to kind of just also welcome other types of horror for sure. And
and
yeah,
this year we have Nancy, which is a really great
yes,
film starring Andrea Riseborough and Steve Buscemi. That's her name, right?
Yes, yes.
Which is more of a psychological thriller, like a dark drama / psychological thriller, and likewise we're showing Felt, which is also more of like an indie drama that has darker themes, darker subject matter, but I don't think many people would consider it traditionally falling under the horror genre. But we're trying to expand that a bit and play with what that can mean.
Right, because horror is traditionally one thing, but it also can branch out into and be subgenres of other genres. It can bleed its way out into like drama and thriller and all those kinds of things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very cool. So when it comes to curating a festival like this, how do you start? How do you go about finding the films that you want to screen and that would fit what you're trying to do with this festival?
Yeah, well, we were definitely featured in festival platforms like Film Freeway, and there we also ask, we have like questions about entrance questions or whatever you want to call it, where we ask, are you a woman of some kind, are you a woman and are you making a horror film? So that also really limits what we get, as in like we get what we actually need and not like a lot of excess things. Like the first year around, we didn't do that, and we just got a abundance of irrelevant films for sure. So we learned, and then we also source films. We research and see what else is out there and try to get our hands on that. So
every now and then for our events also, sometimes we reach filmmakers that way, just by people finding out about the festival and coming up to us in person or hearing about us through friends.
Yeah,
I guess that's kind of like the grassroots side of it, where it's word of mouth and people who are in the know and interested in this kind of niche will be able to find you guys, and kind of vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just talk about horror, the horror genre in general for a moment here, because horror is pretty underappreciated in like the high film world, if you know what I mean. A lot of people sort of call it a B genre. Do you think, like, how do you feel like horror has made a place for itself in recent years?
What was a big win that, for example, Get Out won last year. So that was encouraging, the Oscars, I mean. But then again, this year, Toni Collette didn't get a nomination, even though she did, brilliant work. So, it's like setbacks and then moving forward, setback. It's like that's how it goes. I mean, I do feel like there are a lot of articles about horror and what is considered horror and, elevated horror and whatever else they want to call it to make it more, I guess, prestigious or something. I don't know. But I do feel like there's definitely a stigma still about it. What do you think, Sarah?
Good question. It's a really big question.
It's a pretty big question, yeah.
It's still a very niche thing, but more and more people are realizing that it has different functions and it can fit in different places and be interesting for different reasons. I mean, there was also the new Suspiria this year with Tilda Swinton, and I was going to say in a supporting role, but actually she does a few things in that film. I mean, I think that art, like the idea of art horror, even though it's been around forever, is finding its way into the mainstream a bit more. Like, you mentioned Get Out, that was a big one. I mean, there was the Babadook a couple years ago in terms of female-directed horror that really made it into the public eye. Yeah, I love it too. And then there were some lesser-known ones like Prevenge, which we showed, and we were big champions of that film and really impressed by that.
But also some horror filmmakers these days, or first-time horror filmmakers, when they're interviewed, they say it's actually not a horror film, or trying to make it milder somehow. So it's always nice to hear from, like, for example, Jordan Peele was definitely very open about being a horror fan, and that's always like something really nice to hear that someone's like actually, owning it. So,
when we looked at more traditional horror, how the female archetypes always traditionally been represented as, as you go through all those traditional horror stereotypes, I suppose. And I don't know, maybe you could speak a little bit to that. And I don't even know how you would call it, like where she's a damsel and she's sexualized, like hypersexualized through like that male gaze viewpoint, and then has to be beaten down.
Well, if you look at slasher films, especially throughout,
right?
Traditional slasher franchises, there's a lot of punishment of female characters for being sexual. And but there are also final girl characters who are ambivalent figures, which have they have some strength, but they also have some problematic elements about them too. There's so much, there's a lot of ambivalence if you look at female characters over time. There also are a lot of like strong and multifaceted ones throughout horror history, which we shouldn't ignore. Like we shouldn't say that women have always had a relegated position in representation in horror, because horror has also been a genre that's treated women as more complex figures, also more darkness and capacity for evil and sinister character traits, which is something that a lot of mainstream Hollywood cinema has completely overlooked or not portrayed. Right? There's been a lot of other genres are more guilty of representing women as simplified, weak characters, I think. But still,
it's a general film problem.
There's still a lot of room for improvement. Right? We have to look at that, and still today, there's you can choose various different ways of examining women in horror as viewers, both as viewers and as protagonists, and see the ways in which like we've been erased, but also have had sort of a unique position and potential for more complex spectatorship and identification in horror.
Yeah.
So I think it's we just have to keep getting deeper into that, I think, over time.
True.
And the more women there are behind the camera and in producing roles and writing roles, the more we're going to be able to delve in there and have more interesting conversations about this stuff, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any particular strong female characters from the horror genre that you personally identify with, connect with, or that are personal favorites to yours? Who are some of your favorite women in horror?
Okay, I'm going to name one who I don't know if I necessarily identify with her, but I love the Ruth Gordon character in in Rosemary's Baby, who's this elderly Satanist neighbor. What is her name? Minnie Roman or something? The next
I'll look it up.
The powerful Satanist matron of that building. So that's a really
interesting pick there. Okay.
Character.
Love it.
Horror, who I have to always pay tribute to if anyone asks me this question. And then in terms of newer horror, I do love Alice Lowe's character in Prevenge. I really think she's a very complex and relatable, dark, flawed, human, funny character in horror.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I also identify with any of these, but more or less. I would say Tilda Swinton and We Need to Talk About Kevin really grabbed me.
It's also directed by Lynn Ramsey.
Also female directed. Yeah. We also showed it actually a few years ago as well.
At the first
Very
festival.
cool.
Yeah. And May by Lucky McGee. Yeah, really love that one.
Again, I don't want to identify with her completely.
Okay, maybe that was definitely the wrong word to use.
But I feel it's invigorating just to see something like that on screen, just to see women who are not easy to categorize and digest.
True.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's a great film called Excision, which might not be traditionally thought of as horror, but that's also a wonderfully unpalatable, unruly female protagonist who, I think we can all recognize parts of our own adolescence in this year as well. So, recommend checking that one out too.
Well, I'm getting some good recommendations here. I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of the horror genre, and the horror films that I tend to see are generally the ones that break out from that like niche and sort of become a little bit more translate a bit more into the mainstream world. So
I have to add one more. I'm sorry, I have
go
to.
for
She
it.
just came.
Yeah.
Julie from Hellraiser. Anyone? Julie from Hellraiser. Who kills men to feed the evolving corpse figure of her lover. Anyway, it's
especially in 1, right? In 2, she's a little strange in 2, I feel. But okay.
First Hellraiser.
Yeah.
So again, I don't relate to her. I don't identify, but I really appreciate her as a female villain of horror.
Interesting, because horror has sort of been able to sidestep in a way a lot of the female stereotypes of mainstream cinema, and actually a way I hadn't quite connected the dots before, but because the characters in horror, they generally are a lot more dynamic, a lot more diverse and messy and complicated than what you get to see in mainstream cinema. So maybe mainstream cinema has a little bit to learn from the women of horror.
Oh yeah.
The next installment of Final Girls is coming to Berlin, right, on the 1st of February, the 1st to the 3rd. What can audiences expect?
Actually, January 31st.
January 31st.
So February
3rd. 4 days this time.
Oh, yes. Cool. Very cool.
We're expanding. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Onwards and upwards. So what can audiences expect to see this year?
Right. Okay, a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, yeah, we have 7 features, including Nancy that we mentioned, and Good Manners, Cam, which is like a huge breakout hit. And then also Messiah of Evil, which, sorry, say that again, Sarah?
Oh, Tigers Are Not Afraid.
Yes. Messiah of Evil, which is like this underground 70s film, which is quite a find. Felt, as we also mentioned, and Hounds of Love, which is Australian. I'm guessing you're Australian, perhaps?
I am, yes, that's right.
Yeah, so it's an Australian film, so check it out if you don't know it, Hounds of Love. And then we have 8 short blocks, different themes, and lots of talks by really interesting people.
I think it's worth saying some of these, the themes of these short blocks, which are also, we're excited about.
Yeah.
Including elderly women in horror. So, all right, I mentioned my favorite, Ruth Gordon, earlier.
Yes, you have.
But we have some really great short films with some very dynamic and complex older female characters in them. We have a program on obsession, Tainted Love, coming of age, comedy horror, midnight movies. Have I named them all, Ellie?
I think so. Flesh and Blood?
Flesh and Blood, right? Family horror. Yeah, every year I think. Horror in the family.
Yeah, family horror really always. I think that's probably my most. They're the kind of films that give me the most nightmares, and especially family horror usually includes children, creepy children. And then if you add a sprinkling of the supernatural over the top, I will not sleep for weeks.
Yeah. It's great fodder for all of our worst anxieties and nightmares. So.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, ladies, and having a chat about the festival. Again, I think it's a really cool festival, what you guys are doing, and bringing a really great little niche of cinema in one compacted space, and I love it. So I hope that...
Can we just mention our social media and stuff like that?
Absolutely. Where can everyone find more from you?
Yeah, so you can find us on Facebook under Final Girls Berlin Film Festival, Instagram at Final Girls Film Fest, and Twitter at Final Girls Fest. Yes.
Excellent. And do you have any further plans, like at the moment? I know you said that you also travel the festival around other places. Any other countries on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, we're, things are... Right now, we're so focused on the actual festival that it's hard to say that, but I do think that we're gonna definitely have another best of tour, perhaps in Sweden again and other places too. I'm sure.
right now. So just a nearby city in Germany, Bremen. We'll probably have something there.
Oh, good to know. Yeah.
More. I have some friends in Baltimore. We'll see about that coming up soon. So I don't know where your audience base is. Who knows? Maybe we can connect with somebody in Australia through you if you have any friends who put on film screenings.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much. You just have to send over some files through WeTransfer, and you can have your own Final Girls screening. So.
There you go. Very cool. Well, I definitely know, some people in Australia, and you should definitely come to London. I'm in London, based in London now, so you should definitely, London's got a great underground cinema world happening, so you should definitely come here.
Cool.
All right. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks again for joining me. Everyone should go check out more from the Final Girls on their social media. I'll leave all the links. Go to the festival if you can, starting on the 31st of January. And that's it from us. And thanks again. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you to everyone for tuning in to another episode of Roll Credits Interviews. It's been a blast having you. As always, you can stay updated over on the YouTube channel by subscribing or head over to rollcredits.net and I will see you over there. Okay, bye.